Drew Walter Peterson was born on January 5, 1954, in Oak Park, Illinois, to working-class parents who lived by traditional suburban values. His father worked a steady job, and his mother kept the home, ensuring that Drew and his siblings learned the importance of obedience, hard work, and respect for authority. Drew wasn't what you'd call a stellar student, but he had something else. He was street smart, charming, and had a natural ability to read people. It made him stand out, even if he didn't excel academically. Growing up in the 1960s and 70s, Drew was caught between two worlds, the quiet, predictable suburban life and the restless, rebellious energy of the changing culture. He had friends, but he wasn't particularly popular. He was more of an observer than a participant. However, Drew knew how to get by. He understood people's motivations, fears, and desires, and this skill would later serve him well in ways no one could have imagined. Drew graduated from Willowbrook High School in 1971. By 1972, he enlisted in the U.S. Army, choosing a path that would define much of his early adulthood. As a military police officer, Drew experienced a world of discipline, order, and authority. The military shaped him. He learned to follow orders, to operate within a strict hierarchy, and most importantly, he learned control. This was no ordinary lesson, it was the foundation upon which Drew would build his life. He didn't just want control, he craved it. In 1976, Drew returned to Illinois, ready to enter civilian life. But the rigid discipline of the Army never truly left him. Drew joined the Bolingbrook Police Department, where he quickly rose through the ranks. By the early 1980s, he was a trusted officer in a quiet suburban town. He had earned respect. He was the officer who handled the job quietly, without fanfare or attention. It was this low-profile success that allowed him to operate with a sense of impunity. People trusted him. They believed in him. But even then, Drew Peterson was hiding something much darker than anyone could have imagined. Drew's first marriage was to Carol Brown, a woman he married young. At first, everything seemed normal. They had 2 children, and Drew's career as a cop was flourishing. On the surface, they appeared to be the ideal suburban family, living in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other's name. Drew was climbing the ranks, Carol took care of the children, and life seemed to be on track. But as the years went on, cracks began to form in their seemingly perfect life. Carol later described Drew as controlling, distant, and occasionally violent. He was a man who expected things to go his way, always. His infidelities and emotional abuse pushed her to the breaking point, and eventually, they divorced. Carol left, but Drew remained firmly planted in his life as a police officer. A man whose position of authority allowed him to remain untouched by the consequences of his actions. In the years that followed, Drew married Vicki Connolly, his second wife. They stayed together for 10 years, but like his first marriage, it was a turbulent relationship. Vicki later testified that Drew was abusive, jealous, and volatile. She recounted a time when he held a gun to her head, his rage fueling the kind of terror only someone in a position of power could instill. But, like so many others before her, Vicki stayed silent. She feared the repercussions of speaking out against a man who wore the badge of a cop, the ultimate symbol of authority. It wasn't until Drew married Kathleen Savio, his third wife, that the cracks in his carefully crafted life began to show in a truly horrifying way. Kathleen Savio was different. She wasn't afraid of Drew. She was strong-willed and independent, not easily cowed by his presence. Their marriage, from 1992 to 2003, was a battleground. It was a constant war of control, custody battles, and restraining orders. Drew couldn't handle her resistance, her refusal to submit to his dominance. Their home, which should have been a place of safety, was instead a war zone. Friends and family who witnessed their relationship saw the bruises, the arguments, the screaming matches. They knew something wasn't right, but no one could quite piece it together. Police were called multiple times, yet the calls were dismissed. Drew was a cop. His word carried weight. His position gave him the ability to escape the consequences of his actions. Then, on March 1, 2004, Kathleen Savio's body was found in a bathtub, face down, her scalp lacerated, her body bruised. The scene was bizarre. No water in the tub. No obvious signs of a struggle. Drew was quick to provide an alibi, claiming he had been with the children. Despite the strange evidence, the authorities ruled her death an accident. It seemed to make no sense, but Drew, protected by the badge, walked away scot-free. He was untouchable until he married Stacy Callis. Stacy Callis was 19 years old when she met Drew. She was young, innocent, and had dreams of a life far beyond the small town of Bolingbrook. Drew, nearly 30 years her senior, appeared to offer her a world of stability. He bought her a car, moved her into his home, and treated her like a queen. But as time passed, the shine wore off, and the reality of their relationship became clear. Drew was not the protector he appeared to be. He was controlling, demanding to know where she was, who she was talking to, and what she was doing at all times. She wasn't allowed to have a life outside of him. Even her pastor noticed the change in her, how her once vibrant spirit seemed dulled by fear. In private, Stacy confided in him, trembling with fear, "He killed Kathleen. He told me how. He made it look like an accident." By 2007, Stacy had become a prisoner in her own home. She spoke of divorce, of leaving Drew, but she was terrified. She knew too well what he was capable of. But even with her fears, Stacy never imagined that Drew would take her life in the same way he had taken Kathleen's. On October 28, 2007, Stacy Callis disappeared without a trace. She didn't show up at her sister Cassandra's house, and she didn't respond to calls or messages. Drew, ever the manipulator, quickly told the police that Stacy had run away with another man. He claimed she called him and said, "I need space," before disappearing. But those who knew Stacy knew this wasn't her. She wouldn't have left her children behind. Cassandra, frantic with worry, filed a missing persons report. Stacy's family and friends immediately began to suspect that something far more sinister had occurred. The media quickly picked up the story, and Drew's public persona began to unravel. The smirking, charismatic cop was no longer the trustworthy neighbor, the cop next door. He was a man whose past was filled with violence, control, and the bodies of his wives. As the investigation into Stacy's disappearance progressed, authorities began to re-examine Kathleen's death. The coroner's report, once ruled an accident, began to raise suspicions. Kathleen's family had always believed she had been murdered, but their voices had been ignored. Now, finally, they were being heard. Kathleen's body was exhumed, and a second autopsy revealed the truth: Kathleen had been beaten, held down, and drowned. She had been murdered. In 2009, Drew Peterson was arrested for the murder of Kathleen Savio. Despite the mounting evidence, Drew maintained his innocence. Even as he was led away in handcuffs, he smirked and said, "They won't get me." But they would. Drew Peterson's trial began in 2012, and it was a spectacle of pain and justice. Witnesses came forward. Vicky Connolly, his second wife, broke her silence and testified about the abuse she had suffered at his hands. Relatives of Kathleen and Stacy shared their stories of fear, of women who had been silenced by Drew's control. Stacy's pastor gave testimony about her confessions, confirming that Stacy had feared for her life. Thanks to Drew's law, hearsay testimony from both Stacy and Kathleen was allowed, further strengthening the case against him. In September 2012, after weeks of testimony and deliberation, Drew Peterson was convicted of first-degree murder in the death of Kathleen Savio. He was sentenced to 38 years in prison without the possibility of parole. But Drew wasn't finished yet. While behind bars, Drew plotted yet another crime. In 2015, it was revealed that Drew had attempted to hire a hitman to kill James Glasgow, the prosecutor who had sent him to prison. The plot was caught on tape, and Drew was convicted again, this time for attempting murder. He was sentenced to 40 more years. Stacy Peterson's body has never been found. Her sister, Cassandra, keeps a light on for her every night, hoping for a miracle. Stacy's children grow older, their faces marked with the shadows of missing memories and unanswered questions. "I made her a promise," Cassandra says through tears. "I'll bring her home. I don't care how long it takes." And Drew Peterson, behind bars, knows the truth: he will never escape the legacy of what he did. A cop, a murderer, a man who used his badge to destroy lives. And as long as that light stays on, his evil will never be forgotten. Drew Peterson's story is a tragic reminder of the length some will go to manipulate and control. But it's also a testament to the strength of those who fight back. the women who spoke out, the families who fought for justice, they are the ones who ultimately brought him to justice. And that's today's case, Drew Peterson, the cop next door who fooled everyone until it was too late. What do you think really happened to Stacy? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this case chilling, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next story. Until then, stay sharp, stay safe, and trust no one too easily.